Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Strong Collectors Podcast. I'm your host Dakota, here with Kevin, the owner of is this the largest action figure
Well, I think it's the
museum?
only action
Only.
figure
Okay.
museum.
Okay.
The only museum dedicated to the art and sculpting of action figures.
Okay.
Now, there are a lot of toy museums and a lot of doll museums, but we're the only ones really, our main focus is action figures.
Okay. And so what gets an action figure in here? Like, are you doing brand new things, hot off the press? Does it have to be vintage?
No, oh no, we've got new things, old things, and our title is we are the Toy and Action Figure Museum.
Right.
So even though our focus is action figure museums, well, we also like, the accessories and the vehicles and the, play sets and other toys too, things that just kind of remind a lot of people of their childhood and growing up.
Yeah.
But we've got brand new stuff too. So,
Okay. Cool. Now, how did this all start? Like, is this all your personal collection? Is this a combination of collections?
Well, we have a lot of different collections, but it did start with my collection. We started back, gosh, it's 20 years old come October. But the town had kind of done a visioning process. We're a small town. They wanted to attract people to the town. And so they said, well, we wish we had unique tourist attractions in the downtown area. Well, I had a massive toy collection, and I'm a toy designer and things like that. And so I would get a lot of press attention because I lived in this small town in Oklahoma, but I worked in Los Angeles. And so because I designed toys for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and other stuff, all kinds of stuff, news stations would come and do a story on me, and they would always show my toy collection. So after this show would air, total strangers would seek me out and knock on my door and say, can we come in and see the toys? I'm like, well, I'm in here working, but yeah, come on in, And so I joked that I was the unofficial tourist attraction and maybe we ought to make it official. Well, one of the committee members took me serious, and he went back to the committee and said, Kevin Stark's going to donate all of his toys to a toy museum. And I said, no, I didn't say that. I said, but I will loan you my toys.
Sure.
And I will certainly help with the effort to get the place going. So actually, we are a 501c3 nonprofit.
Okay.
The whole community actually helped build the place. So it's not really my place, and I don't really own the place, but I own a lot of toys.
Sure.
And I make sure that the displays are created, things like that. When you ask whether we have new toys, I will put together a display perhaps, well, like when the Justice League movie came out, I would have the old Justice League figures, action figures, and how they looked in the comics and things like that. But I would also go out and buy the new ones, so let's compare. This is what we grew up with, this is what they look like in the comics, and this is what they're going to look like in the movies.
Okay.
So I'll do things like that. And so I'm continually, changing the displays and things like that. And so, sometimes it means I need to go purchase something.
Okay, nice. That's what I was going to say too, is when you're getting new things and you're purchasing, is it also donations from, like, I would imagine the community, but also I would expect maybe the whole country now knows of you and maybe wants to send some of their collection.
Oh yeah, we have gotten large donations from Arkansas, Missouri. We drove to Maryland and picked up a collection of 10,000 action figures.
Wow.
So we have gone all over the country and gotten things from all over the world, actually. We've had people send us stuff from Germany and Australia and things like that. So in Brazil, I have now you'd say maybe a pen pal in Brazil, and we talk action figures all the time. We've never met, but he sends me stuff and I send him stuff. And so, if there's things he can't find, in Brazil, I'll send him stuff. And he sent me a whole set of Brazilian action figures.
Wow.
And stuff. So, and he sent this big Hulk figure that's behind me here. It was like really cool, you know. I was like, wow, I've never even seen that. You
Yeah.
know, we don't even have that in America. So, you know, so it's very cool that we get that. So yeah, we get collections from all over.
Cool.
So.
What is your favorite thing to collect? Like you personally, is there a certain figure that you gravitate towards?
Oh yeah, I really like Batman.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm into Batman, but I'm into Batman and all the extra stuff. Uh, I collect action figures, love action figures, but I like my collections to be fun.
Yeah.
And so I like to collect also the wacky, goofy stuff.
Yeah.
You know, the I don't know, the light plate that's the Batman light plate, or the Superman alarm clock, or whatever. You know, I collect the cereal boxes.
Yeah.
So I've got all these cereal boxes. I just like the goofy stuff too. You know, I like all my collections to have a sense of fun and a sense of humor. I see a lot of people's collections online, and they've got like all of the super expensive stuff, and it's all looks like it's in a museum and things like that. But there doesn't seem to be any fun to it.
Sure.
You know, I mean, it seems very sterile to me, and I couldn't figure out for the longest time why I wasn't enjoying them, why I wasn't liking that, and that I finally hit that that's it, because even here we keep a sense of fun about it, and we have a sense of humor about the place and about the action figures and toys and all that. I mean, because when I was growing up, all my toys played together.
Right.
And I've got people come in here and say, "Oh, you can't have that toy with that toy," and I'm like,
Yeah.
why?
Yeah.
Why can't I?
Yeah.
You know, it's like they're toys. They're fun. Have a good time with it.
I liked how you had your space display and you had like RoboCop and Alien and all the different kind of sci-fi things all together and with the Star Treks. And
Yes, they were all in the bridge play set. You know, and actually, if you know Star Trek: The Next Generation, Q is the character in there that could make all that happen. You know, so you know, I mean, there's a little story to it.
Sure. Yeah. But, no, I love that, and how, you know, like you said, your displays aren't just like, here they are standing straight up and down. It's you've got like a whole dio of GI Joes in action. You've even got Captain America in with the GI Joes, and that's maybe where somebody's like, hey, that's not a GI Joe. Don't put. But it's fun, and they're toys.
Well,
so
even if you look in the back of a Jeep, there's Spider-Man waving to you. You know, and it's like, now wait a minute, why is Spider-Man in World War II? You know, I said, well, because you know, I want to make sure you're looking.
Exactly.
Okay, so if somebody asks me why Spider-Man's in there, I go, oh, okay, you're really looking. You know? And I've had the Marvel display where all these, you know, the Marvel legends were together, but I put Napoleon Dynamite in there, you know, and people, why is Napoleon Dynamite in there? I said, well, just to make sure you're looking.
Yeah, I saw you had Dr. Evil over there.
Yeah, Dr. Evil's in there. You know, it's like, there's all these villains, Marvel villains and stuff, and there's Dr. Evil, and it's like, you know, he's not Marvel. I said, you're right.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's super fun.
I've even got Daredevil in the Springfield Department of Motor Vehicles trying to get a driver's license. So,
yeah, I love that there's like stories within, because you can come in and you can appreciate just looking at things, but then when you actually get to talk and like, you know, explain how things are set up, it's like there's layers on top of the fun, because it's toys and it's meant to be fun.
Yeah, and you know, my wife and I, over 20 years ago, traveled the country looking at toy museums and children's museums, doll museums, things like that. And a lot of it, they were one person's collection, and there was no information really about it. It was just a bunch of stuff. And a lot of it was the fact that it was very close in. You couldn't stand back and look at anything, you know? So I made sure that when we built this place and designed this place, that we had a lot of room for people to walk around. Yeah. You know, that it didn't feel so claustrophobic. Although you look at this and you go, okay, it's sensory overload. Well, yeah, it is, but it's just right here. Right. Okay. You know,
and you can step back and look at it from afar
and take a photo from afar. And, you know, we welcome cameras, which a lot of museums don't. And I'm like, why wouldn't you?
Right. Because it's still something you have to see in person, because, you know, you can just look and Google a picture of an action figure and it's right there on your screen. But if you come in here and see it in action or on display, it's different.
Oh yeah, it's very different. Yeah, as much as we try to take great photos, it's really difficult to capture the essence of this
Right.
place with a photo.
Exactly. And like you said, it doesn't even in a picture, if you could get the best picture, it doesn't give you the space that you're moving around within. And I was even telling my wife, like, you've got like the drainage pipes as like decoration, but it works so well because it seems comic book.
Yeah.
So there's like details in there that you don't really, you wouldn't
Yeah.
think of otherwise, but then you see it and you're like, actually, this works really well together.
Yeah. Well, you know, the funny thing is, we had architects that wanted to design this place, and a couple of them gave us some rough ideas about what they would do and all. And it's like they had no idea what we were doing. They had no concept, because they would have this big room and one small little display in the middle. I'm going, you're not getting it.
Right.
I said, it needs to look like that.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I like that you still have like, there's like it looks like you're walking into a cave when you go into like the Star Wars room.
It used to be the Bat Cave.
Okay. I was thinking that would make sense for a bat cave.
It
but
was a Bat Cave. I had to take all my Batman stuff out. We've got 3 other buildings full of stuff.
Okay.
And so I stored that in one of my buildings, and then we brought the Star Wars stuff in, which still kind of worked with the cave, you know.
Sure.
But not as well.
Yeah. And I'm sure people appreciate that level of a Star Wars collection.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And I love Star Wars, but I don't really collect Star Wars
Sure.
a lot. So a lot of that was donated.
Okay.
And then a lot of it also, our board members are Star Wars collectors, some of them, and so a lot of their stuff's in there.
Yeah. I feel like that's one of those popular things that people can walk in anywhere and they know, like Darth Vader, R2D2,
Right,
stuff like
right.
that.
Yeah.
So it's something that can pull people in, and then they can maybe explore some of the other things that are
Yeah.
a little newer.
Well, you know, and that's really something else that we try to do around here, is that in our museum, you can actually gravitate towards 1 or 2 things, but there's a variety. There's such a variety. You know, you may love Superman and not care about anything else, but we got Superman, you know. And you may not be into toys at all, but you're into World War II stuff. And then we've got the World War II, you know, we've recreated, and complete with the dog fights and everything else, you know. It's just there's a variety here. You know, I know somebody who they're trying to make a Hot Wheels museum, which is great, and there are a lot of people who love Hot Wheels. But then it's just, to me, it's just one thing.
Right.
It's just cars.
Yeah.
It's just cars.
I imagine that would look very display case heavy, and it's
Yeah.
not like you can't give it the personality that you have with the toy room here and
Right.
everything.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm wondering how they're going to do it. And I think they can do it.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of Hot Wheels collectors, but generally a lot of them have a pretty big collection.
Sure.
So I don't know if they're going to see anything new.
Yeah.
You know, but I hope they do.
Yeah.
You know, but here, I mean, you can have people come in here who don't care anything about toys, and people ask me, well, what kind of visitors do you get? And I'm like, okay, we get families who think it's just for the kids, but 5 minutes in,
Yep.
dad's going, oh my gosh, I had that.
Right.
You know, and they relive their childhood. We get collectors, of course. But then we also get people who want to know, what the hell does an action figure museum look like?
Yeah.
Okay, so we get the curiosity seekers who come in and really enjoy the place.
Yeah.
Because first off, it's way bigger than they thought it was going to be. A lot of people think it's just a small little, you know, store front or whatever. But no, we've got 7,000 square feet here. But I can fill a 30,000 square foot facility.
Right.
So anybody got a 30,000 square foot building out there, just let me know.
Right.
You know.
How many action figures do you think you have in here right now, if you had to guess?
Oh, gosh, I have no idea. I would say at least 10 or 12,000.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with 10 or 12,000 action figures and toys in here, what does cleaning and dusting look like? How do you handle that at
Well,
this scale?
Okay, a lot of the stuff is in cases, so we don't really have to clean that very
Right.
often. But this,
Yeah.
okay, usually once a year in January, because we're very slow in January and February. But winter, school's in session, all that. We close for a week and clean this.
Okay.
So, and what that entails is I get those flat tubs and I put all the toys in the tubs and try to keep them together as to what goes with what. All those come out on the floor. we set up big tables and volunteers dust the toys.
Okay.
While they're dusting the toys, I dust the wall.
Okay.
Get on a ladder and dust the wall. I mop the floor, clean the furniture, all that. And then we put it back in a different configuration.
Nice.
So if you come back, it'll be
Yeah.
something different.
So
I'll pull stuff from the back and bring it towards the front, or I'll take stuff completely out and put new stuff in.
Right, because like you said, you've got 3 buildings worth of things that you could mix and match.
Yeah, and then in the meantime, after all that's done, I'm always adding to it.
Sure.
Okay, and so it's like a giant puzzle for me. Okay, where can I put this piece and not take anything out? So it becomes a challenge.
Yeah.
But it's a fun challenge.
Awesome.
So.
All right, now can we do a little bit of show and tell, and you show us some of the like hot items in here? So first, I'm wondering, do you know what the oldest thing in here is?
Well, the oldest thing we have in here is on loan to us.
Okay.
And it is one of the original Barbies from 1959. And this is actually loaned to us from a friend of mine. When I was putting together the Barbie display, I was talking to her about it. And she says, oh, well, would you like to have one of the original Barbies to put in it? I was like, you got one?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah. She goes, yeah. And so she brings it out and shows me it has the earrings and she's got the sunglasses. She didn't cut the hair. You know, I said, this is pristine. This is beautiful. You played with this? And she said, oh, yeah.
Wow.
I said, and you didn't destroy it?
Just took good care of it, I guess?
Oh, she took great care of it. So it was wonderful. So I was very, very happy to put it in the display. So I put it in the display and I invite her down to see the display. And she's looking at it. She goes, and I have all this information up there. And I have a photo of the original Barbie who was the brunette. Now, the blonde was the more popular one. Okay. And she says, oh, I have a brunette too. And I was like, are you kidding me? I said, that's more rare than the blonde.
Yeah.
I said, why didn't you tell me?
Right.
So that's probably the most expensive thing we have in here. And it's also, you know, the rarest of all the things we have.
Okay.
Now, I also have one of the very first Batman action figures. And it was like from the 40s.
Wow.
And so that's in my private collection.
Okay.
Because I had to move the Batman out.
Right, sure.
So, yeah.
Right. All right, so then what is, this would have to be an impossible question, but I'll ask it anyway. Is there like a meteor's coming towards Earth, you can only take one action figure out of here to save it? What would it be?
Wow. You know, I have no idea.
Yeah.
You know, because here's the thing. I love this stuff, and people make the mistake that I'm obsessed with this stuff. I just really appreciate it.
Sure.
I just really love it. I'm not really obsessed with it.
Okay.
I know it looks like I am.
Yeah.
Okay. But I have so many other interests and so many other things I'm doing that this is just one small facet of what I do and who I am.
Yeah.
So really, I don't have anything that I feel like I would have to save because there's not anything in here I couldn't replace.
Sure.
But one of the things that is dear to my heart is the very first action figure line that I started collecting.
Okay.
And this was in 1986. Was the Superpowers line from Kenner.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if there's anything I'd want to say, it'd be
those.
Okay. The way my whole collection got started was I was dating this woman back in the 80s, and she drugged me to an antique flea market. I didn't want to spend all afternoon looking at antiques. I had no interest in antiques. But I went. You know, got to keep the peace.
Right.
Well, we went, and they had all these toys, and they were very inexpensive. They were downright cheap. I was buying Superpowers action figures for 50 cents and $1.
Wow.
You know, and I came out with an armload of stuff.
Yeah.
All right. I said, wow, that was really fun. And she goes, well, it happens every month. I said, all right.
See you next month.
Yeah, see you next month. I went every month, and then they started doing it twice a month. And so, yeah, my collection grew rapidly. But the stuff, the superpower stuff, I really love that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've collected more of that over the years. And now I'm paying $50 to $100
Yeah.
a piece for them
Sure.
instead of 50 cents and $1.
Right.
So,
Are you collecting the new McFarlane superpowers as well?
I love them.
Nice.
Yes. I've got all that stuff.
Okay. How do you feel about the switch from McFarlane back to Mattel? Are you excited? Do you have high hopes for that? Is it just kind of like, things change hands?
Well, things change hands.
Yeah.
I mean, I've worked for enough toy companies to know things change hands, and it happens. And I also understand to wait and see, because even when Hasbro took over the Marvel Legends from Toy Biz, everybody was worried.
Yeah.
Oh, it's going to be terrible. They're going to do horrible, And initially, they didn't do so hot.
Right.
But they got it down.
Yeah.
And now those Marvel Legends are great.
Yeah.
But the earliest ones they did weren't so great. But they're great now, and they're better than the Toy Biz stuff.
I agree. I think there are some people that like to look back with rose-colored glasses, just nostalgic, and they're
It's
like, the
nostalgic.
sculpting and those. It's like there are parts of it that were really cool, but overall, I think the technology is really improved, and they're just overall better figures now.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I don't still appreciate seeing a Toy Biz Marvel Legend and
Right.
collecting that too.
Right. Yeah. I loved them. I have a lot of them. I've got a whole wall of them.
Right.
But to me, the plastic they use and all that, it's just kind of this rubbery stuff, and the joints are stiff, and all that. But gosh, when they came out, I remember loving them.
Right.
But
You got a comic book with it too,
Yeah.
and sometimes a base, or even like the motorcycles included for just a normal price.
yeah, but the new ones,
Right.
oh my gosh! And not only are they great and wonderful, they're doing characters that are rare. I mean,
Right.
that like nobody knows who they are.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah.
I like the second and third tier characters a lot. Although I like Superman and Batman, I like Ambush Bug and
Yeah.
things like that. So,
Yeah, I think for me, it's like I don't do a ton of McFarlane right now, but I'm excited because when Toy Biz switched from Hasbro, I was like collecting, but it was more as a kid playing with my toys at that time. So it's like the toys just kind of looked different when I was getting them. But now that I'm a collector, I kind of have this big like shift of companies to get to see. Like it feels almost like a moment in time of like the DC brand is going somewhere else, and I'm going to see a new company take over. Because also when McFarlane took over, I wasn't collecting at the time, so I wasn't a part of the community, like feeling the hype and the change and everything. So I think that's exciting too.
Yeah. Now, see, I wish on the McFarlane DC stuff, not the superpower stuff, but the other DC stuff, I wish you'd done them the same scale as the Marvel Legends.
Right.
Because I want them to be interacting.
Yeah.
But instead, they're the 7-inch, and okay, you got the McFarlane figures over here, then and then they can't really interact. I mean, they can, but
Right.
But come on,
Yeah.
And McFarlane kind of, in a lot of ways, a lot of his stuff still has that Toy Biz kind of rubbery feel to it.
Yeah.
And you've got to be really careful with the joints, things like that. One of my biggest complaints is, and McFarlane's very guilty of this, the joints, the ball and joint stuff have just the tiniest bit of plastic holding it in there. Okay, it breaks.
Sure.
It breaks all the time.
We always talk about that year 2 Batman and his bicep exploding, and
Yeah.
we talked to Todd, and he was like, "Oh yeah, if you talk to customer service, they've got replacement arms," and they don't have replacement arms. But
Right.
it was nice to say, Todd.
Why do I need to get a replacement
Right.
arm? Just make it right the first time.
Yeah. I will say, I feel like he's learned, or the DC figures have come a long way from like.
Oh yeah.
Like even when they started doing soft good capes is what I think of all the time. It started out as kind of like a Lego cape on Batman, and now he's got wires and stuff for the base price, where Marvel Legends is starting to get into soft goods capes and stuff, but there's still no wires in those. And they're, I would say, better than the Lego cape, but still not on the level of McFarlane yet.
Well, I got to give McFarlane his due. I mean, look, the guy, he just totally reinvigorated the action figure market. I mean, the stuff we were buying, look, let me just step over here. And this I show people. This is what was coming out,
Right.
okay, when McFarlane did Where is he? When McFarlane did, here he is.
Spawn, yeah.
His
First
first
one.
Spawn. Okay, now you're too young to remember this.
Right. I don't
Okay.
even know if I was, what year was this?
This was in the 90s.
Maybe. I was born in
Early
95.
Okay. This was $4.99. This was $5.99. $1 more.
Right.
And that's what you got.
Yeah.
This guy, he
He has
did
a
great
presence and
yes, great sculpting, great painting, great articulation. This looks stiff.
yeah.
Okay, all right. So what he did was he created the atmosphere that other toy companies had to do better. Okay, they had to do better, and so now, here's your Daredevil now.
Yeah.
Oh, why is this not? Why are we not doing this anymore?
Right.
Because people demanded this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Made everybody step their game up. And
Yeah, yeah. And I kind of have a theory too that I think a lot of the people who are in the toy industry now and for the last, 20, 30 years, grew up with this, but wanted this.
Yeah.
And so we're like, as designers and sculptors and all, no, we demand this.
Yeah.
We want better stuff. And so I appreciate, and I've always appreciated the sculpting and the work that goes into the action figures. Because to me, action figures are sculptures for the masses.
Yeah.
It's hard to afford a lot of these big, sculptures and things like that. We've got a few here in the museum.
Right.
But they're $500-$600 a piece.
Right.
I
can get a lot of Marvel Legends for that.
Oh yeah, me too. Yeah. Well, yeah. That reminds me, my wife bought a prom dress for her daughter, and it was like $800. I was like, how many action figures I could buy for that?
Right.
So, I kind of put everything in that perspective, So
Yeah, and that's always, there's the levels of, there's the price factor, and then there's the space where you only have so much shelf space unless you create a museum like this.
Oh, if I ever run out of room, I just buy another building.
There you go.
Yeah, I got 4 buildings downtown, so
Right.
I just buy another building.
Yeah, you just turn the whole block into action figure museum.
Yeah.
There you
Well,
go.
in fact, one of my buildings, I'm going to be setting up my Batman collection.
Okay.
Okay. Now, see, here's the funny thing is that did all this and stuff, and people think I'm making millions of dollars here.
Sure.
My detractors. Okay. I make zero money here. Okay. I donate everything. I donate my time. I donate my talent. I donate, action figures, things like that. But when I had all this in my own place, where I didn't have to have customers and, people, tours and all coming through, I could just play with my toys.
Yeah.
I could set them up a different way. I would spend an afternoon, moving stuff around or cleaning stuff or whatever. And I didn't have to have it all back together by 10 o'clock the next morning.
Right.
So one of my buildings, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna create that space again where I've got my own action figures.
Yeah.
And can mess with them and not mess with them if I don't want to.
Cool.
So
Nice. So I wanted to go back to, you were saying about like the toys are kind of their sculptures and it's the art of it, because that's kind of how I feel as a collector. And like, it's a little, I think it's becoming more popular. You're not like such a geek going to get your lunch money stolen for being a collector now. But like for me, I see a painting on the wall and I'm like, oh yes, that is nice. But I can look at action figures a little bit more and be like, oh, I can see more of the sculpting and the details.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I like the Four Horsemen's Mythic Legions and stuff, because there's the pop and swaps, and there's some of the older pop and swap type figures in here, and where you can kind of create your own character. And then I've never been much of an artist. I don't draw or paint or anything like that. But when I can put pieces together and like even just setting up like my Marvel Legends that I'm not really customizing or anything, but making dioramas and putting them up in certain ways, setting scenes kind of like you're doing here. It's like that feels like, oh, I have a little bit of an artistic talent here.
yeah. yeah, that's great, and it's fun.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can totally relate. I love that.
Do you get into any customizing of figures, whether it's Marvel Legends or anything?
You know, I did a little bit of that, but I haven't done much of it. I don't really have the time to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I feel like I don't have the talent to do it. I see people who do it and they're like, wow, that is really good. I like a lot of the Justice Society figures, you know, the characters from the 40s.
Sure.
I really like, but you know, they don't have a lot of those.
Yeah.
And so I see online someone's got this collection of Justice Society figures. I'm going, whoa, dude, where'd you get that one and that one and that one? And he'll write back, oh, they're all customs. I'm like, of course they are.
Right.
You know, so I don't feel like I'm really very good at that. So,
Okay.
you know, I probably could be if I put my mind to it. But,
Sure.
between running this place and my own business of doing art and things like that, it's really hard to, I don't even have time to just mess with my toys
Yeah.
anymore. So
Understandable.
in fact, I was thinking tonight, you know, I think after dinner, I'm just going to mess with my toys.
Nice. Cool. Is there anything, even though you've got everything here and in your 4 buildings, is there any toy or action figure out there that you're like, ooh, I'd like to bring that to the museum or to your personal collection? Anything that you're hunting?
Well, there's a new, McFarlane has a new Dr. Fate figure coming out.
Yeah.
I want that really bad.
Okay.
I just saw it the other day, and it's the Silver Age version of Dr. Fate. Dr. Fate's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
So I have, you know, I'll pick a character every now and then. Like I've got a whole giant shelf full of Hawkman and Hawkgirl, and another one. These are in my office, just Thor and Thor related characters, you know. And so I've got just a few of Dr. Fate because they don't make very many of them, you know. And so I have a few of those. But I want that figure really bad.
Nice.
And I'm sorry to hear that he's not going to be doing the DC stuff anymore because I think he did a great job.
Yeah.
And I liked a lot of them. Some of them were kind of wonky and weird, and I'm like, why did you make that? But, you know, somebody loves it, I'm sure.
Right. And he's got more of those JSA type, like he's got a Sandman, an Hourman. They're all coming soon.
Ooh.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I got to have those.
And look out for those coming.
Yeah. Well, and who is it? I was thinking about somebody. I wish he'd make the Legionnaires, the Legion of Superheroes.
True, yeah. He really hasn't done anybody.
Done that, you know, and I sculpt them more like real people. I get a little tired of all the muscles and everything, and their clothes just look like they were spray painted on. You know, I really like the versions of, like they did Kurt Swan's art in Superman. They designed a whole line of action figures based on his art. I love that, you know. That was what I grew up with, Superman. And so to see that where it's not all this sculpted, you know, super
jacked,
busting out, you know, it's like, no, it's more like a man, Superman.
Right. There you go.
And with the Legion of Superheroes, they were never muscled up. They were teenagers, you know. And so I'd like to see that. That would be really cool. I have all the DC Direct Legion of Superheroes,
nice.
But they're not articulated.
Do you have that DCUC, like it was like a box set that kind of like folded in on
I
itself?
do not have that. Would like to have that.
Yeah.
I do not have that.
That one looks pretty cool. What about for Marvel Legends? Is there anything that they haven't done yet that you're like, ooh, if they could give me some of this character or team even?
Well, now I have most every Marvel Legends I want, but what they haven't done yet that I'd like to see is a Galactus. And I'm not talking about the Galactus that's for the 3 3/4 figures.
Not the HasLab either?
Not the HasLab one.
You want bigger than HasLab?
Bigger than that.
Oh, man.
Okay, that's what I want.
You're going to be the only one that has space to display something like that.
Yeah, well, yeah. Everybody else can eat their heart out.
Yeah, exactly. You might have to be a custom for that.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
That would be cool.
We know I'm not doing that.
Right. Commission. I mean, somebody out there, if you can build
yes, and please donate it to the museum.
Yeah, it's possible.
Hey, it's possible. Yeah.
All right. thanks for spending your time with us today.
Yeah, sure. I've enjoyed it. It's great to have you in the museum.
Yeah, if you guys are ever coming through Oklahoma, you got to stop. It's $7 to walk through.
Yeah.
It's great. So make sure you're liking, sharing, subscribing. And until next time, stay strong. Nice.
All right, cool. That was a great interview, man.
Good. I'm glad you liked it. Like I said, I try to keep it fun and casual.
Oh, and you did. I mean, it felt so comfortable. Like you said, it was just a conversation.
Yeah.
So many interviews I get, well, like I said before, I do it a lot. They're just very stiff and very, and I try to inject some fun and humor into it.
Exactly.
But this was so comfortable.
Yeah.
You know.
It's toys. Cool. It doesn't have to be so serious.
Oh, right here.